All right, Dave. I'm sure there's quite a few stories you can't mention, but it was a very sort of high pressure job that you did, especially at the big meetings, and you all stayed away and you all had a few quid in your pocket. So dare we suggest that it was a bit of a work hard, play hard environment back in your in the golden days?
Yeah, there are a few stories that I can't talk about, but I've got one that I can. It was work hard, play hard. There was a lot of pressure at the big meetings. We knew when we were going to Royal Ascot. We knew when we were going to the Derby. We knew when we were going to the big festival at Goodwood in August that there were going to be some big punters there and the stakes were going to be high. And obviously, we were there to do a job for Colin, all his staff, including his son David, who was my friend. And occasionally you needed to release of an evening the pressure of what had gone on during the day. So it's a Royal Ascot story. We'd been there the Tuesday and the Wednesday, so the following day was Gold Cup Day. And halfway through the afternoon, David said, "Do you fancy a night out in London?" That's Colin's son. And I said, "Yeah, whatever." So he said, "Okay, end of racing, me and you are going to go into London. We'll have a night out, then get back to the hotel." During the course of that day, we backed a few losers between us, and we were short of readies. So David went to his father and said, "Me and Brewer are going to go into London for a night out. We need a few quid." So Colin gave him 200 quid. This must be 30 years ago, by the way. And David said, "200 quid, Dad, we're going to London. Give me £1,000, we'll bring the change back tomorrow." Colin looked at him, but gave him the £1,000. We got a lift into London with one of the London bookmakers. It was a lad called Steve Wilson, actually, who worked for Victor Chandler. Dropped us off in London, went out, had a few beers, had a bite to eat, ended up in Stringfellows, which was the big nightclub in London at the time. I don't need to go into too much detail, but we arrived back at Royal Ascot for the third race on Ladies' Day, Gold Cup Day, and we didn't have a penny left. That was a big night. And Colin, his face was thunder, wasn't a happy chap.
He's probably lucky he was with his son, wasn't it?
I think if it hadn't have been for the fact that I was with his son, I might not have been on the firm after that.
So did you ever rep Colin on your own?
Yeah. So as time went on, Colin taught me everything I know about the game, including the way he played. It was a tradition. When he wasn't backing horses, if you didn't think he knew something that was value to be with, he was a traditional bookmaker. He always wanted the favourite to be the worst, maybe the second favourite a loser as well, and so on and so forth, to having rags winners. Or he might have a second favourite more than on his side than he should do if he felt that the information had led him down that path. But what I'm trying to say is he eventually trusted me enough to let me rep for him. He lived in the north for many, many years, but eventually he realised that the big business at that time was down the south. So he made the move to Ascot. Myself and David and all the other staff still stayed in the north. So we used to travel down, or Colin travelled up, for us all to work together as a team. But there were still a lot of meetings in the north that he didn't want to come to because he was down south. In fact, he lived on the Wentworth estate, the golf estate, and he became a member at Wentworth. He was a great golfer, Colin. Played off 2-3 handicap in his day, and played golf right into his 80s. But yeah, I repped for him at York. I repped for him Pontypridd. I repped for him at all his northern tracks. There were splits. There were days when Sandown was on. There were days when New York was on, which probably leads me on to a day at York and Sandown, where Colin said, "Well, you stay up in the north with one team, and I've got my southern team down here." We had about 5 big punters at the time. Colin said, "We'll probably get 2 or 3 at one and a couple at the other." So that was the plan. I forget which meeting it was. It wasn't one of the big meetings, but it was a Saturday meeting, and all Saturday meetings at York were good. So I arrived at York with the northern team, and one by one, I saw all 5 punters before the first race. So I rang Colin up, I said, "Everybody's here." I said, "All 5 of the big punters are here." And he said, "Right, you're going to have to play." I said, "Well, what do you mean you're going to have to play?" He said, "You're going to have to take them on, and let's hope, things fall in our favour." So have you got any leads? So we went through the card. He had a couple of leads, a couple of marks, a couple of horses that he thought might be valued to be with, a couple of horses he thought might be valued to be against. Everything fell for me. They were all playing. They were all playing every race. I couldn't have done it more right if somebody had given me tomorrow's paper with the results in. And it was the best day I'd ever had for him. I won him £58,000. So after, he never rang me during the day. After racing, he rang me. He said, how have you gone on, lad? I said, I've won 58. He said, oh, that's good. He said, I've won a couple of grand down here. He said, so that's £7,800. That'll do us. I said, no, I've won £58,000, Colin. He said, what? I said, I've won £58,000. He said, Brewer, how much have you won? I said, I've won £58,000. He said, you better take an extra grand for yourself. I said, I've already done that, Colin. Everything fell into place. The results were unbelievable. And a couple of races where the results were bad, I'd just jinked the right way.
No, we don't want to, after all this fun we've had, we don't want to get into the negativity, but things obviously changed when it changed for everybody else with the advent of the betting exchanges and stuff. I mean, how drastic a change? Was it gradual, or did you suddenly, with a matter of a few months, think, blimey, this has all gone a bit...
There were a couple of things happened in fairly quick succession. So there'd been a movement for years to try and get rails bookmakers to have boards like the ring bookmakers. And it never looked like happening. But there was a final push when John Banks was chairman of the Rails Bookmakers Association, where they finally managed to convince the powers that be, the racecourses, to allow rails bookmakers to have boards like the ring bookmakers had always had, so they could show the prices as opposed to just having to be asked and having the price on a tic-tac card. And also quickly followed by the buying and selling of pictures. Prior to that, it had been dead men's shoes. It was always a father and a son. If somebody died who didn't have a son to come into the business, that pitch became vacant and everybody moved up one, including somebody on the waiting list moving on to the official list. It was slow movement and it made for very little change. Those two things changed things a lot, followed then by the bombshell that was Betfair and the betting exchanges. How did Betfair first grab hold? It seemed fairly gradual, but then overnight, having been around for a while, it just became the machine that it is now, and it altered things in a big, big way. It was the bookmaker's Bible. The prices that we put on our boards were prices that we'd taken from the exchanges with a little bit of margin in our favour. There were people that were backing horses in the morning that they thought were a big price and then laying them back to the exchanges during the afternoon. It became a game changer. A lot of people would say for the worse. I'm a bit on the fence. Some things became negative because of it. Other things became positive because of it. The prices that we now put on our board give punters a much better chance of backing winners than they did before. Bookmakers had a bigger margin on the boards, pre-exchanges. Because exchange prices are out there on the web, we have to be much fairer to punters with our prices than we ever used to be.
Now, we've talked about Colin all the way through this. Sadly, he died. How long ago was it?
Yeah, I know exactly when he died. I'll never forget it. It was such a big part of my life. So I was born on the 29th of August, 1959. I mentioned that earlier. And I, not personally, but Colin was buried, cremated, and laid to rest on the 29th of August on my 60th birthday. So in 2019. So he died about the week before that. He died late August 2019, and I think he was 84. He had a great life. He was a great bookmaker, a fantastic human being, a good amateur golfer. He enjoyed his life. Nothing to come back for.
And now you're a bookmaker in your own right. Fair bet.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a play on words, isn't it?
It is a play on words. Most people call themselves David Brewer Racing. They call it the business after themselves. At the time, Betfair was all the rage. It was on everybody's tongue. So when I set up on my own, which was about 14 years ago, I think I was about 48, 49, I just decided to call myself Fair Bet, twisting Betfair around. And I've used that brand ever since. Although I do have David Brewer Racing registered with the Gambling Commission if I ever want to change.
I mean, can you play like Colin?
I don't think the game allows you to play like that now. There are one or two bookmaking firms out there that play big at the festivals. A lot of the midweek stuff now, there's nobody about. You've just got people going for a day out, pensioners, couples. It's all small stuff. You're waiting for the Saturdays to come along. You're waiting for the festivals to come along. Out of the pictures that I've got, I probably go to a third, maybe a little bit more than a third of the days that I actually could go to. I stick to the Saturdays. I stick to the festivals. I don't do enough days racing to play with gay abandon day in, day out. On a Saturday, I try and play. I try and make good books. I try and hold money. But during the week, not that I go much during the week now, whenever there's a big bet appears, they tend to win. They know more than you. There are no mug punters floating around during the week. And if there are any mug punters, it's an unfortunate word, mug punters. If there are any losing punters, bookmaking firms latch onto them and try and keep them. There are not dozens and dozens of them like there used to be when Colin was in his when he was in his pomp.
Okay.
There's a lot more cash floating around. There were some good cash businesses. We had a punter that had a dozen. We called him Arthur the Butcher in the book. That was his nickname. He had a dozen high-class butcher shops in North Yorkshire, Harrogate and surrounding areas. He used to come and he used to be a good monkey punter, a £500 punter, 3 or 4 times a day. And he might come 2 or 3 times a week. They were good publicans. There was that sort of money floating around. It doesn't exist anymore. We're becoming, to a large part, a cashless society. Bookmakers are now taking debit card bets. If somebody had said that to me 10 years ago, I'd have laughed. But you've now got, you know, to be a part of taking money, you've got to take debit card bets.
Right, now, I hope you don't mind me mentioning it, but you've had the biggest winner of your life recently because you've been ill and now you're better. So,
yeah, I've been really lucky on 2 occasions. 2014, I thought I was the fittest 55-year-old around. I had a perforated bowel, which resulted in me collapsing, being incredibly ill, major surgery, woke up with a colostomy bag, but woke up having had sepsis, septicemia and peritonitis. I survived that, got reversed in 2019, back to living a normal life, only to be diagnosed with throat cancer in early 2020. I went through radiotherapy during 2020 and touch wood, as all us gamblers like to say, I'm back to full fitness. I've had 5 all clears and yeah, life's good.
And would you say finally that you're going racing when you enjoy it? Racing's been your life. You don't need to go racing, I assume.
I still love the game. It's been a huge part of my life. It wasn't a career, it was a life choice. It wasn't just a job. It was a way of having an amazing, a way of getting a living and having an amazing life. The colourful caravan that racing was back then was an amazing thing to be part of. I look back on it all with fondness. Obviously, we all slow down. I don't go as much as I used to do, but as long as I'm fit and well, I'll still go as an on-course bookmaker.
Brilliant. Well, Dave Brewer, thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon.